What's up, everyone? My name is Isaiah Newsom, and this is the ZayNews Podcast, where we talk about all things basketball, whether it's the NBA, college hoops, youth sports, you name it. If it's about basketball, then we talk about it. We are in the thick of the NBA playoffs, and I love nothing more than to jump on here and talk with you guys about what we're seeing because it's been an amazing playoffs, right? I'd say some of the best basketball being played, some of the most competitive basketball being played in the last 5, 10 years, maybe more, right? I really cannot remember a playoff atmosphere that has been this competitive. So I wanted to make sure I dive into all that and more. Make sure if you like the content to like, subscribe, comment, engage with the content. Let me know where my takes are trash. Let me know where I'm on point. Let's engage. Let's have a community. Let's have fun in here, okay? Without further ado, wanted to make sure I bring us up to date on where we were at in the NBA playoffs right now. It's been about a week since I last did a podcast episode, and a lot has changed, right? We are fully into right now the second round of the NBA playoffs. So going down the list, we got Denver versus OKC in the second round out in the West. We have the Warriors versus Minnesota. That game last night was shocking. And then over in the East, we got the Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Pacers, as well as the Boston Celtics versus the New York Knicks. So I want to go down one by one every series, tell you my thoughts, tell you how I think the series will end up. I picked these prior to, but this is the first time I am putting it in a video format. So I'm going to go over what my picks are, how I think the series will lay out, and also what I think of the first one or two games that have happened in said series. Okay, so let's start with a game that happened last night over on the East, and that is the Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Indiana Pacers. And this was actually game two of this series. Now, as everyone knows, the Cleveland Cavaliers have suffered quite a few injuries in their playoff run this season, right? And that has really came to show itself in this series in particular because even though they're a 64-win team, they were the favorites heading into this series. They are down 0-2, and those first two games were in Cleveland. So I can't say that I'm shocked because obviously anytime injuries play a role, anything can happen. But they gave that game last night away, I'd say. You know what I'm saying? They were up 14. Indiana fought back. To make it a competitive game, but it still felt like they could have won that game. And that's unfortunate, right? Because I think if you do win that game, it gives your team the confidence to go win this series or even be able to take another game's rest for the guys who are on the bench to allow them to even get more healthy. You know what I'm saying? There's not that pressure, if you're tied 1-1 to come back all of a sudden if you aren't ready. The good things I take away from that game specifically for Cleveland is that they were competitive and that now they know when they play their brand of basketball, even if they do have a few guys missing, I think their habits, the level at which they compete at, their organization, their ability to stay, disciplined in what they do is better than Indiana's, right? And that was evident last night because they were crushing them for most of that game. Now, when you come down the stretch and games get tight, right? Indiana has more firepower right now with the full roster. You know what I'm saying? They have more firepower. They have more guys who have been in those moments and have been the guy. You know what I'm saying? Donovan Mitchell played incredible last night, but even he got hurt down the stretch, right? And you were asking a lot out of him. So I'm not surprised that once Indiana went on that run, they ended up winning the game just with what Cleveland had, like what Cleveland had to go with them. Listen, man, you don't have, Darius Garland right now. You don't have Evan Mobley. A few other guys injured as well. So it's tough. You know what I'm saying? It's tough. But hats off to Indiana. They've been playing great basketball. Obviously, they've gotten a little bit of a lucky draw between Milwaukee being unhealthy. I think they may have beaten Milwaukee even if Dame was healthy the whole time. I think it would have went like 7 games, but it seems like they just come to play against Milwaukee. But that's besides the point, right? Point being that they've had so far a pretty smooth and I don't want to say lucky, but like kind of lucky playoff run where they've other teams have had a lot of their best players down, which you can only play what's in front of you, so it's not their fault, right? They shouldn't be penalized for it, or they shouldn't be um, talked bad about because other teams are injured, right? Part of making it to the finals, people you talk about it all the time, right? Is being healthy, and that's why players have said in the past it takes a little bit of luck. You know what I'm saying? It takes a little bit of luck to win an NBA championship. And the best availability or the best ability is availability, I think is what they say. So this is no smear Indiana campaign or anything like that. But it's just unfortunate, right? Because we want to see competitive series. Now, what I will say is, if if Cleveland's guys come back, if they are healthy, if they don't have these lingering issues that really impact their level of play, let's say if they all come back 90% or better, I still think Cleveland can win in 7. To me, they are the better team, right? And I think that was evident throughout the season. They played at a higher level more consistently, and they got a lot of guys who are very confident, who can make shots, and they defend at a really high level. So I think the Cavaliers can still come back and win in 7 games, most likely. I will say Indiana is very good at home, so that could be a tough one. You're going to have to get 1, hopefully 2 there. But if health, let's say if the cards are deal them a favorable hand, I think they can come back, right? Because I do think that they are the better team, and I think if they are healthy, they match up pretty well with Indiana. To be honest, Indiana plays kind of a unique style of basketball. They're very one they're very good at their style of play. They don't play a ton of isolation basketball. They have a lot of continuity in their offense, and there's a lot of movement. But the reason I say Cleveland matches up well is because they have the guys to match up with and defend those guys. And then on the offensive end of the floor, they also play with a lot of continuity on offense, right? They also have a lot of guys who can shoot the ball. And I'd say they have a little bit more firepower. I'd say their best players are a little bit better than Indiana's best players, right? So I think they're fairly similar, but at just every level, when healthy, Cleveland's a little bit better to me. So that's why I say I still think that there's hope for them. Down 0-2, it looks, like the light is dimming. But if health doesn't end up um, derailing them completely, I think they'll win game 3. Game 4 is going to be highly, highly competitive. But if they can get game 4, then, we're off to the races and we have ourselves a even series again. You know what I'm saying? This could be one of those series where all the games are won on the away team's floor, which would be pretty cool. We'll see, though. Okay, moving on. Knicks Boston. I think this one blindsided a lot of people. I had the Boston Celtics winning in 6 prior to the series. I still think 6 is a safe bet. And let me tell you why. Now, hats off to the Knicks in coming back down from 20 in game 1, winning that game. I don't think they played their best basketball, right? Like, if one of your best players isn't playing his best, then how can your team play their best, right? And I'm referring to Cat, right? Karl-Anthony Towns. He didn't necessarily have his best game. But side note about Cat before I get too much into the series, Cat has not historically been the best playoff riser. You know what I'm saying? Where his stats and his play elevate during the playoffs. You can look at any stats and it'll tell you that. And even this playoff, he had some good games, but he has also underperformed quite a bit if we're talking about just from a numerical perspective, right? How many points he's averaging, how many rebounds he's getting, et cetera, right? He was in foul trouble last game, but what I like about Cat this playoff run, and even a little bit last playoff run, when you talk about the way he guarded Joker in that Minnesota Denver series, right? Didn't stop him, but like slowed him down and just played hard. He has his limitations, but he is trying his best to play winning basketball, right? When you really watch these games, down the stretch of games in that Detroit series, into this series, into last night, right? Like he's making plays down the stretch, whether it's getting his hands on a loose ball, getting an offensive rebound, getting a steal, and then taking it down court, getting fouled, and going to the free throw line, right? Like he is making plays. And I love that he's to a point in his career where those stats that show up on the box scores don't determine his level of effort, right? So I think we really got to give a tip of our hats to Cat because he is playing winning basketball, right? Is it always flashy? Is it always him scoring 20, 25, and 12 like he did in the regular season? No. The game changes, right? The playoffs seem to always favor more guard oriented play lately. So you got to understand that. But I think, Cat is playing excellent basketball, and um, I think he's playing winning basketball, and he's just doing a lot of those small things when he's not getting his touches like he normally is, or when his shot's not falling like it normally is. And he's helped them win a few of those games that were very tight in this playoff series, just with his added effort down the stretch. Right? Again, he has limitations. He struggles on defense when he has to guard perimeter guys. Um, he's a prototypical big sometimes, or let's say a yeah, I guess prototypical big. I can't think of the word that I'm trying to say. But a stereotypical big is what I'm thinking, right? Where like sometimes he just makes boneheaded decisions, like that three that he fouled Jaylen Brown just by putting his hand on his hip. It ended up getting called on the floor, but if that got called for a three, right, that might make them lose the game. You know what I'm saying? So still makes mistakes, right? Still not perfect, but my goodness, man, I love the effort that he's been playing with and the mindset he's had down the stretch of games where he doesn't allow himself to get taken out of games. He is invested, he is playing hard, and he is trying to win those games regardless of if he has 15 or if he has 30. You know what I'm saying? And that says a lot about a dude. So he's a winner, man. He's playing like a winner. I don't think that's been a connotation you've attached to him always throughout his career, but I think the way he's played the past two seasons in the playoffs confirmed that he's been playing winning basketball. So got to give a shout to him. But back to the series, the Knicks Celtics. So Knicks end up upsetting, coming down for 20, pull themselves out of a deficit. And then they're just better down the stretch. You know what I'm saying? They're hitting shots, they're making plays, they're being more aggressive. Mikal Bridges, even though his stats weren't eye popping either, he made a lot of winning basketball plays, primarily on the defensive end of the floor. I love the way that they competed. Love the way that they competed. And anybody who has watched Boston over the past couple seasons knows that they are at a higher, let's say, percentage of having these sorts of duds of games than other teams because they shoot so many threes, right? And I don't necessarily think this is, we should indict them for it, right? Because they've won an NBA championship with this style of play. They've clearly been successful winning over 60 games the past two seasons. What they're doing is working, and they are the prohibited favorite still, even being down one in semifinals. But with that said, um, you could almost bank on in a long series. Let's say if you knew a series was going 7 games, you could almost bank on them having a poor shooting night 1 to 2 times. Now, will they have that poor of a shooting night where they miss 45 threes and go 15 for 60? Maybe not, right? But I could see them going, 15 for, 50, 48, right? Maybe instead of shooting 25% from the three, they shoot like a low 31. Like I could see that happening again in this series, especially if the series goes past you know, 5 or so games. So I say all that to say, right? Like, who knows? Like, when you're shooting at a low percentage, but you continue to take these shots, and they took a lot of bad shots, right, where they could have gotten downhill and maybe gotten something different. Um, you leave an opening for the other team to beat you, especially a playoff team who's in the second round with you, right? And as the series gets later, the margin of error gets smaller, right? So when you have these games, you leave the floor open, and teams can take advantage of that, and that's exactly what the Knicks did, right? Um, Now, I am not of the mindset that. Give me 1 second. Now, I'm not of the mindset that because the reason they lost is because they shot so poorly from the three, right? I've seen a lot of people say, and it's a narrative that's pretty common, right? Um, you know, Lost my train of thought. If they shoot, if they make 5 more threes, they win, or you know what I'm saying, they're not going to shoot, this bad from three again, and they simplify it down to that. But we have to remember, right? They had a bad shooting night the whole night, and they were up by 20 at one point, right? So it's not just the 3-point shooting that made them lose. You know what I'm saying? It's the resiliency of the Knicks. It's their will. It's once they started getting some things going, how they fought back. Um, the Knicks were defending well. You know what I'm saying? Like we got to tip our hat to the Knicks for defending well during a season where they did not defend well for most of the season. You know what I'm saying? So got to tip our hat to the Knicks there because they did a lot of good stuff. Um, and it's not just as simple as you guys didn't make shots. Now, if they do make let's say 25 threes, they're going to be tough to beat, right? I'm not saying that that's not the case. Um, but it's not just simply the fact that they missed shots as to why they lost. Because if that was the case, they wouldn't have been up by 20 on a bad shooting night, in the second and third quarters. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's more than that. I think what we have to also remember is this Knicks roster was built to compete with a team like Boston, right? They went all in. They got a very similar roster makeup when you're talking about their star caliber guys, their role guys. Um, and this is why I say talent for talent. Like, this should be a very competitive series, right? I think what's given people doubt, what gave me doubt, was the Knicks' inconsistency primarily on defense during the season. I think if they shored up some of those holes on the defensive end of the floor, there wouldn't have been as much doubt in them, and this series probably would have been much more competitive from like an outsider's view, right? Like going in, I think a lot of people pick like Boston in 4 or 5, right? Just like they match up well and they do everything a little bit better is what most people's takeaway was. I personally think, and the reason I chose Boston to win in 6 is because Jalen Brunson can be the best player on the court any given night. We saw that yesterday. And also, I think he has proven to be the best closer every night, dang near. You know what I'm saying? Like, he will consistently be the best closer on the court. Now, that doesn't mean that he's going to close every game and they're going to win every game. But, when it's being played on the margins, right, and there's a few different plays that need to be made down the stretch of a game, I'd probably favor Jalen Brunson over Tatum, over Brown. Uh, and that's just, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? So that is why I thought the Knicks could win 2 games. And now, with them winning a third, or with them winning the first game of the series, um, it could potentially go 7. Now, I'm going to stick with my pick and say Boston in 6. I think Boston being up 20 on a bad shooting night showed that I think they usually will be the better team. I think they've proven that they're the better team, right? I think that's fair enough to say, right? And this, I'm talking, put last year aside, right? Put what they did last season aside. Just this season, I think they've proven to be the better team. So I think they're going to make the proper adjustments. I think they're going to come out better next game. I think if they get a 20-point lead, they're not going to give that sucker up again. So I still will stick with 6. I think the Knicks will definitely get 1 at home. And then after that, we'll see. It'll depend. But I would love to see it go 7. Honestly, I would love for the Knicks to win. To be honest with you, I was telling this to my family the other day. I was like, man, it'd be cool if all the low seeds won. You know what I'm saying? In all these second round matchups, all the low seeds won. So the Pacers got by them, even though only caveat I'll put to that is I would have rather saw the Pacers beat a healthy Cleveland team if they were going to win, as opposed to a team that's just hobbled from top to bottom of their roster. But besides the point. So if the Pacers won, if the Knicks won, if Denver won, and then if the Warriors won, I would love to see that. Right, I would love to see that. No number 1 seeds, no high seeds in the conference championship. I think that would be pretty cool, and it would just be a testament to how competitive the NBA has been this season, right? So, yeah, I love it. I think I still pick Boston in 6, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes 7. And if it goes 7, who knows what's going to happen? You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things. Game 7s can go either way. You never know. I would love to see a Game 7 for sure in that series. Okay, moving on over to the Thunder versus the Nuggets. Nuggets are another team who were losing. OKC was in control for pretty much that whole game. And then all of a sudden, Nuggets came back swinging. They came back fighting. OKC honestly allowed them to get back into the game with the fouls down the stretch. A few things don't go their way. miss a couple free throws, a couple bad plays here and there, extending the game a little bit too long without allowing the shot clock or the clock to go down enough between fouls. Just gave Denver too many opportunities. They capitalized. They got a wide open look from Aaron Gordon. He knocked it down. You know what I'm saying? And then that is what it is. I love it. I love it. And I think we saw why everybody still has a little bit of reservation about the Thunder. And I don't think it's fair just to say it's experience, right? I don't think that's necessarily it. That's part of it, right? That's part of it. But I also think their roster makeup right now, um, I don't know if it's conducive to a championship. I think they can win a championship, but I think when you have teams like Boston that they may have to go up against, um, teams like Denver, like they're going up against now, um, it's tough. And let me explain. So OKC is very, even though they have a lot of great players, right, and a lot of guys who can contribute, when it comes down to it, their offense is very much Shea making plays. Shea make play, Shea make play, Shea get a shot, Shea get a shot, right? That's why you see him shooting, it's normal for him to shoot 25 to 30 shots in a game, right? Like you see that, you don't bat an eye because that's happens on his stat sheet a lot. That is a little bit of a problem, right? Because you become a little bit easy to guard and there's less consistency in those other guys, right? Chet, Jalen Williams, they're two probably next best guys, and those two just don't get as consistent of shots. They don't produce as consistently, and right as a competitor, a team who's playing against them, you could almost um, say, we're just not going to let Shea beat us, right? And when you have the option to do that, and you just allow other guys to make plays, and it's 50-50 whether they can make plays or not, it becomes hard to win the later you get into the playoffs. Now, I still think that they can win this series. I still think whether they do or don't, this is going to be a deep series just because how great Joker is and how he can be such a catalyst for his teammates and make openings and stuff. And to be fair, other guys have been great too. Aaron Gordon has been great in this playoff run. Jamal Murray has had some great playoff moments. Russ, man, I would love to see Russ get a championship. Tip your hat to Russ because he's been playing really well in this playoffs in totality as well. So they have played well, but for that reason, right? I think this is why teams can give the Thunder some problems, right? Because unless like Jalen or Chet just have favorable matchups and they actually have to work, like they're not going to, you can't pencil them in for 20 every night. You know what I'm saying? They're going to have bad shooting nights throughout the series. They're going to have games where maybe they only score 12, Chet, maybe even like an 8-point game, so it's hard, right? It's hard because you don't necessarily know where all your points are going to come from every night. And I think that's why outside of just the experience, why there's a question mark attached to them. Going into this series, I thought the Thunder would win in maybe 7. I think I edged the Thunder in 7, but I would like to see the Nuggets win the series. I would love to see the Nuggets win the series. I would love to see them wind up in the finals. Russ get to play in the finals, get some vindication, especially with the Lakers out now. There's a few guys who I would love to see win a championship, but I think if I was picking out of these two teams, I'd rather see the Nuggets win a championship if I had to choose these two teams. So we'll see. I think it'll still go deep. I think honestly, if it goes to a game 7, I think I would favor the Nuggets. Yeah, they've been there, they've done that, right? I know I said experience isn't all of it, but in a game 7, I think experience plays a major role, and you also have the best player on the court. So if it goes 7, I think I would favor the Nuggets. Minnesota versus Golden State. Great win by the Warriors last night, right? You get only about 13 minutes of Steph Curry in the first half, and then he's out for the rest of the game, and you still manage to win, right? You get a 20-point lead early on, you hang on to it. They try to make a push there at the end of the fourth quarter, but excuse me, Golden State continued to make plays. They continued to make shots. and they won. Now let me go back to this. So let me go back to my thoughts heading into the series. Now, I thought Minnesota was going to their physicality, the way they played the Lakers, and mixing that with Golden State just coming off a 7-game series, a competitive 7-game series where guys were getting banged up. We saw Jimmy Butler at the end of that game. His back was bothering him again from taking that hard fall in the first series. So, like, the Warriors are clearly hobbled, right? And now Steph with a hamstring strain. So I thought the physicality Minnesota brought to round one would bleed over into round two. And just, I think the Warriors are more built to handle physicality, right? They play deep into their lineup. They have Draymond who nips a lot of that stuff in the bud. They have Jimmy. They have these guys who are used to handling physicality and respond really well to physicality. So I thought they would respond to it better than the Lakers did. But I just thought the fatigue, right? I thought the fatigue would play a pretty big role. And I thought that Minnesota would come in here and beat them in, 6 games. Now, with that said, it still could end in 6 games and Minnesota could still, turn it around. I'm not saying that they can't. With that said, I think a lot of the Wolves' advantages don't play as well against the Warriors as they do against the Lakers. One of the main reasons being is because the Warriors play a lot less isolation basketball than the Lakers do, right? The Lakers, the Timberwolves defense is set all the time, right? You have help side, you have guys who are physical who can move their feet from 1 to 4, right? Sometimes 1 to 5 if Rudy Gobert's out the game. And even Rudy, right? He guards isolation as well, and that's something that he doesn't get credited for very often. But either way, right? Like the Lakers, they're staring you in the face. There's not a lot of movement. There's not a lot of continuity in their offense. And they have guys who who thrive in that space. But for whatever reason, they were hobbled in the playoffs, like Luka, LeBron, Austin Reeves, etc. But it's just more favorable of a style of basketball for Minnesota to guard. You play the Golden State Warriors, everything is continuity. Everything is continuity. Everything is movement. We're not isolating you guys. We got Steph running off 20 million screens throughout a game. We got Jimmy Butler who's backdoor cutting. We got Draymond who's dribble handoff into backdoor cuts into slips, hitting guys, on the backdoor, passing it along the baseline, hitting that corner 3-point shooter. Just a lot of continuity, a lot of free flowing offense that is predicated largely on movement. They play very little isolation basketball, right? In spots, right? Maybe Jimmy has a favorable matchup in the post. Maybe Steph got a switch that he likes, or maybe he's just feeling it, give him the ball, let him work, right? But outside of that, the isolation stuff isn't as prevalent, and that is harder to guard most of the time, right? Because your defense is constantly moving. Now you don't have help side like you thought you had help side. Now your rotations are all out of whack. And eventually defenses break down. That's the whole idea of running offense, right? That's the whole point of running offense and getting movement within your offense, right? It is to eventually break down the defense. And we saw that a lot last night. Not to mention, their physicality wasn't as much of a factor because of that. And also their physicality wasn't as much of a factor because the Warriors have guys who can match that physicality. Now, they don't have guys who can necessarily match the size quite as well. They're still similar to the Lakers in that regard. But I think Steve Kerr's ability to trust his bench down to like the 13th guy, even in, a second round playoff game that is, huge, right? Because if you're up 20 and then you let that lead slip away, that's a tough one to come back from in the playoffs. I thought in a roundabout way, what I wanted to let this lead into is that I thought Steve Kerr coached that game last night seamlessly, right? I think Steve Kerr gets a lot of hate for the lineups he sometimes throws out there. But what I will say is he is never going to run his guys into the floor. You're not going to see him have a guy on the court for 45, minutes. He's going to allow his guys to rest. He's going to trust his bench. And that paid off last night. I'm saying we had Pat Spencer come in, hit a running hook on the right-hand side. I was like, hey, I used to work on that too. We had Kayvon Looney, I thought was huge in the second half. When we saw Rudy Gobert breathed some life into the Minnesota Timberwolves, right? He moved Jimmy out the way. He got a dunk. He got like 1 or 2 offensive rebounds. Kerr said, "Kayvon, come in." That stuff got quiet real quick. It's amazing to me how like ineffective Rudy became in such a short amount of time, um, just by Kayvon Looney switching in, because he said, "I'm a bang, I'm a body up, I'm a rebound," right? And essentially, they just ended up taking Rudy out the game at that point. I don't know if you guys caught that, but I thought that was a very good coaching move by Kerr to Kayvon. He hadn't played a lot up to that point. He played a few minutes in the first half, but you sub him in just to match up with Rudy if you know you're going to try and play big with Rudy, and he essentially nipped that in the bud. And I love Kayvon's professionalism, his ability to come in and give meaningful minutes. That was huge for them, and I think honestly that may have saved the game for them, right? Because once Rudy gets going, everybody gets going, right? He starts getting these offensive rebounds, kickouts. Now you have an open three because everybody had crashed to the glass, right? If he's playing like that, like what we saw, they got like a very like a 1% glimpse of what he did to the Lakers in Game 5, and then they immediately made an adjustment to put that to bed. But like when he is playing that way, right, you're getting kickouts, you're getting open shots. You're getting drives to the lane, right? Because now guys are overplaying Rudy, trying to be over aggressive, box him out, make sure you have positioning. So I thought that was a big, big adjustment that Kerr made. And again, I just think you got to tip your hat to him because I thought the way he coached the game post Curry being available um, is honestly the reason that they won, right? Guys making timely shots, all that sort of stuff, yes. But trust in your bench, trust in your guys to make plays, play within the offense, get good shots, trust you in what you're saying. I think you got to give as much, praise as you do criticism. So if you're one of those people who criticize Kerr a lot for his lineups, right, for just putting guys on the court that you don't feel like should be on the court, or whatever the case may be, you got to also give him praise when he coaches a good game. And last night he coached a great game. So hats off to Kerr. Is that everything? That's everything. That is all the playoff series so far. So really quickly, just to summarize, I still think Boston's going to get by the Knicks. Indiana versus Cleveland. I know I said I want the lower team or I want those low seeds to win, but I still am holding out because I think if Cleveland gets healthy, I think they can win. And to be honest with you, I don't love the Pacers. I think they're a little bit front runners, and if there's one low seed that I wouldn't mind losing, it'd probably be the Pacers. I don't know why. They play a great brand of basketball, man. I think I might be hating a little bit. I don't want to say I dislike the Pacers, but I do think they are opportunistic trash talkers, right? They're front runners a little bit. And that can rub you the wrong way sometimes. But they've been playing a heck of good basketball in this playoff. So they win, they win. I still think that series goes 7, though, and then that's a pick'em series at Game 7. So we got Boston moving on. I'm going to say Cleveland in 7. I think Denver gets by the Thunder, and I think Minnesota versus Golden State is tough. I know I picked Minnesota going in. Should I change my pick? I think this is TBD. We got to wait and see how serious that hamstring injury is, because hamstrings are no joke, right? And if you can't explode off your hamstring, it's very tough to compete at the level you want to compete at, right? If you guys remember when James Harden blew his hamstring while he was in Brooklyn, it took him like 2 or 3 years to trust his hamstring again and start moving again. And at that point, right, he's an older guy, so it was never quite the same that we saw James Harden pre-injury. And then you go back to like Tony Parker, it took him like 2-3 seasons, right? It takes you a while to trust that hamstring again. So that's a rough injury to come back from. So I don't think his is as severe. It was probably a little precautionary for them to leave him out. I imagine if he wanted to play, maybe he could have, just from the way that they labeled it a hamstring strain. But definitely something to be conscious of, because when you're playing this hard, when you're competing this hard, and you have a pre-existing injury, other things, other soft tissue injuries tend to be more likely, unfortunately. So I hope he can get all the treatment that he needs. The nice thing is that Golden State built themselves a little bit of a cushion, so if they have to, I don't think this would be ideal, but if they have to let him sit out for next game, then so be it. You roll the dice and you just do what you have to do. Um, but we're going to say TBD on that one just because I don't know the status of Steph. If Steph is healthy, if he's good to go, if he's going to play in every game, I may switch my pick to the Warriors because I think that they do a lot of things that are going to bother Minnesota's play style. You know what I'm saying? I don't think Minnesota's going to shoot as bad as they did last night every game or anything like that, but I do think that they can match up well. They have guys who, they don't have as many matchups you can expose on the defensive end of the floor. Like the Lakers just made the Timberwolves way too comfortable, right? Getting downhill, beating dudes off the dribble, no rim protection. Even with only like one, even when Draymond's on the floor, right? Like his ability to rotate, clog up passing lanes, contest shots at 6'6", 6'7", long arms, like I think they match up well. So I'm impressed. I'm impressed with the way Golden State turned that out. But we're going to say TBD just because we don't know Steph's status. Okay, want to move on. Want to talk about the Lakers really quick, as always, because I'm a Lakers guy. Now, Lakers fans are delusional. I will be honest. Since we got bounced from the playoffs, there have been a lot of trade ideas that I've seen on Twitter and the media. So far as to say, like I saw Bill Simmons' podcast, that snippet last night where he was talking about should the Lakers trade for Joel Embiid. And the trade package was essentially all our expiring contracts. So Rui, Jared Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent. There may have been one more guy in there, but then there was like Dalton Connect and picks, right? So it was like those four guys, picks. It made the money match up pretty well. And no, we shouldn't. I think that is a terrible trade idea, to be honest with you guys. That is an awful trade idea. I think I think one, we don't know what we're getting out of Joel, but even besides the point, even when you put that team on the court together, Joel is a pretty good defender, pretty good rim protector, but also he's so dominant on offense when he's healthy that you have to play through him. He's not a pick and roll big, right? So then you lose a little bit of what Luka does best. You lose a little bit of what LeBron does best in his playmaking. And I'm not saying they'd be a bad team or anything, like they wouldn't make the playoffs. I think they'd make the playoffs. I think they'd be fine. But I think there'd just be a lot of holes that you could expose for a team like that. I don't love it. I don't love it. I don't love that trade. I think that's a bad idea, to be honest with you. Just to put it bluntly, I just don't see that working one bit. Now, what I will say, and let me go through a couple other trade ideas. I've seen Lakers fans, or let me set this up right. So the more I think about the Lakers roster construction, them going all in on the Luka, LeBron, Austin Reeves core, right? And specifically keeping Austin Reeves and Luka beside each other. I know I'm going to have people say that, Reeves isn't a bad defender, which I don't think he's a terrible defender. I do think he has limitations, similar to like Curry, right? Curry competes hard, but size, strength, athleticism, right? You have some limitations there, especially when you're going up against guys, NBA caliber guys who are freak athletes. You know what I'm saying? The more I think about this, right, the more I think ideally having a center who covers up a lot of the defensive struggles that you have is the way to go for the Lakers, right? More so than, trying to surround them with, defensive oriented wings. Like having a center who can just cover up a lot of your mistakes on the defensive end of the floor, I think is of premium. And I think a lot of people felt the same way because I saw some people saying, go get Bam. You know what I'm saying? Bam from Miami, right? Try and trade for him. Now, this is why I say Lakers fans are delusional, because why would Miami trade Bam for whatever we have to offer? There's nothing we could offer them that would make them want to give Bam up. You know what I'm saying? It's just not it. They didn't want to give up assets to get Damian Lillard, right? And that wouldn't have included Bam. You know what I'm saying? Like the way Miami is operated, there is no shot. Literally, you have a better chance of getting Giannis, I think, than getting Bam. quite possibly. You know what I'm saying? Just because of the way they're run and the way they protect their assets. And that could be a little bit dramatic, but you get my point, right? The idea that the Lakers have a shot at getting Bam is just um, not happening, right? It's just not, right? We can put that to bed right now. I would love it. I think Bam would be the perfect prototype center um, for what I'm talking about, but it's just not going to happen. And obviously, we already had one in AD, right? So when you go down the list, there are very few defensive bigs who can cover up, an entire team's mistakes, right? So he can really cover for the other guys. You got Anthony Davis, which we're not getting back, unfortunately. Um, you got Rudy Gobert. I don't care how you feel about Rudy. He has been a defensive pillar for his pretty much entire career. You know what I'm saying? I think we owe him that. He's been Defensive Player of the Year, I think, 3 times now. And in an 82 game season, right? Like, I think that's so important because, any team can be good defensively for one game. They can turn it on. They can be competitive. But it's hard to do it every night. And I think guys can, the stress of the season, the wear and tear of the season can make it hard. So I think going this route can just shore up a lot of our holes and make defense not as pressing of an issue, right? This season, with the lack of size, with the lack of depth, let's say defensively, right? Um, we just were never going to be a good defensive team. But when you put a guy in your front court who can cover up a lot of those holes, that changes things. So you got AD, you got Bam, you got Rudy. I think even Jared Allen or Evan Mobley fit that mold. I don't think that's a possibility to get one of those guys from Cleveland. I'm trying to think, is there more? Those are probably I feel like there's one that I'm missing for sure. But those are probably the main core guys who could. Draymond, obviously, but you're not getting Draymond. And he's still undersized, and getting older. But those are the guys who can really cover up holes. So the reason I'm setting it up like this and the reason I'm framing it like this is because I think one of the most realistic trade ideas for us to get a center who can fit this mold, who can cover up a lot of the mistakes that the Lakers have defensively, that Luka has defensively, the let's say the inabilities that the Lakers have defensively, the idea of Luka's defensive ability, Austin Reeves' defensive ability. I think our center search may start and end in the team that just knocked us out of the playoffs. Let me say that again. I think the Lakers' center search may end with the team that just knocked them out of the playoffs. And let me tell you why. The Minnesota Timberwolves are going to have some tough choices to make this summer. They're going to have to re-sign or let walk Julius Randle, Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. All 3 of these guys are due for new contracts, and all 3 of these guys are going to want to get paid. Let's go down the list. Julius Randle, he was underpaid in his last contract, if we're being real. What he did for the Knicks, being their cornerstone piece, I think his contract, and I could be wrong, don't quote me on it, was like 120 for like 4 years. Something along those lines. I'm not going to say he was criminally underpaid, but like for a guy who averaged 20, like 4 and 10, was an all-star, perennial all-star while he was there. It's not a ton of money, right? Like that's near max or near max production, and he didn't get that. He is going to want as much or more money this time around. And I think for his last big contract being 30, 31, he's going to want to get paid a little bit more. So I suspect he is going to be looking for somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 to $40 million a year. And I think he has earned that, to be honest with you. Naz Reid is a starting caliber big, right? Whether you have him at the 4 or the 5, whatever, doesn't matter. He's a starting caliber big. He's skilled. He is extremely malleable, meaning, he can guard the perimeter, he can move his feet well, he can guard bigs. On the offensive end of the floor, he can shoot the long ball, he can get inside, he can make layups. He is extremely adjustable. You know what I'm saying? And with that, he is going to want to maximize his earnings as well, right? And I think he's a guy who's going to demand anywhere from 20, which 20 is low. I think maybe not, but I think 20 may be low for a six man of the year, 6'9" guy who can guard 1 through 5. That's a premium guy in the NBA with how teams are made up right now. So I think he could make as high as 30 million a year. And then you're talking about Nikhil, maybe 15 a year. I don't think he'll get 20. 20 is a lot, but like 15 mil a year. That's a lot on the books. That's what you got. 30. Let's go low. Let's say Julius gets 30. Let's say Nas gets 25, 55, 15, $70 million added to your salary cap. That's a lot. And the reason I say Gobert may be where we find our center in the Lakers is because he is 32, about to be 33. He is currently signed on a extension that he just signed, I think, last year through 27, 28. So you have him until he's 36. So you have an aging center. You have a guy who, in the playoffs, you only play about 25 minutes. So his numbers go down, his production goes down in the playoffs, versus a guy who's 25, who you could have alongside Anthony Edwards for the next 10 years, potentially, in Nas Reed, right? That's a tough decision to make. Can they sign all of those guys and keep them with the new salary cap structure? I don't know. And I don't know if they want to go into the second apron and start to take those tax hits consistently every year. Julius Randle's 30, 31, right? Like, he's aging a little bit. Gobert 32, 33. I think it makes the most sense for them and how they want to move forward, probably to let Gobert go. Right? And if they do let Gobert go, I think we are a team. We do have a package we could put together for Gobert, right? I don't know if we don't have a package we could put together for Bam, right? But for Gobert, a guy who is, I don't even want to say regressing, but like with age you do regress. A guy who can be played. Let's say this: a guy who can be played off the floor in the playoffs, and I think. And I think even with that, you still have to overpay for him because, again, he covers up a lot of holes defensively. So I think, one, you're taking on a huge salary by trading for Gobert. That's the bullet that we're going to have to take, right? Like, we're just going to have to eat that. We're going to have to pay him 35 to 38 million a year. But I do think he will be good for the next 3 to 4 years. And he's a guy who doesn't have to be super imposing offensively. It helps when he plays big offensively, but he doesn't have to be super productive offensively, because what he does defensively just brings so much to the table. So I honestly think this is a very realistic trade for the Lakers. This is someone I would seek out, because when you're looking at the center landscape, right, like, there's not many guys who are going to make a profound difference in the Lakers, right? A lot of people have said Nick Claxton. He's not meaningfully changing the Lakers. You know what I'm saying? And then another thing you have to consider is Rudy Gobert plays 70 games plus a year. You know what I'm saying? He's healthy. He's out there. He's on the court always. You know what I'm saying? And he's going to cover up Luka's holes. 7'2" at the rim with a 7'8" wingspan, whatever it is. Great, help side tendencies. Great off the switch. You know what I'm saying? If you go look at the stats, he is great in pick and rolls. You know what I'm saying? He's really good. So we have to be logical when we're thinking about these things. So in a perfect world, we could go get Bam. It's not a perfect world. Teams see, how we just got Luka. They're not going to want to deal with us that much. Rudy Gobert, trading for Rudy Gobert is a trade that helps Minnesota. It gets that $38 million off the books. We have to slightly overpay in that regard, right? We're going to take a hit towards, what we can do in our salary cap. But in that, right, what we trade back to them is we trade some expiring roster spots, right? Some expiring contracts, excuse me. So we send Jared Vanderbilt back over there. we send Gabe Vincent over there. And I'll take it a step farther. I would be okay with including Austin Reeves in that trade if they wanted Austin Reeves, if they sent us like Rob Dillingham back, or if we somehow found a way to do a sign and trade and get Nickeil Alexander-Walker over here as well. So if they wanted to do like Austin Reeves, Gabe Vincent, um, Jared Vanderbilt for, and maybe, a pick or something like that um, for Rudy Gobert and Nickeil, then I would consider that. But I think Rudy Gobert is the piece we want to get. So maybe you do Rudy for Jared Vanderbilt, um, uh, Gabe Vincent, keep forgetting his name, and we would maybe have to throw like Rui in there or something like that to make the dollars even out. Minnesota gets their expiring contracts, right? Those guys will be off the books after next season, right? So you remove that tax hit that they would take in the second apron after that. And then they can go find a center who is a big body who can play. You probably move Naz Reid into the starting lineup, and then you get a bench center who's a little bit cheaper. That sounds realistic to me. I think that is a trade that the Lakers should pursue because the center market just isn't what we need, right? I think um, Rudy Gobert fits us better than Miles Turner does. Or I don't know if fits us better is the right word, but I think he does more for us from covering up our holes defensively. Miles Turner is great. Don't get me wrong. He can spread the floor. There's a lot of good things there. If we got Miles Turner, I wouldn't be mad. Um, but I think Rudy is a big who could really do a lot in just covering up a lot of the holes that Luka has, primarily defensively, right? He's the big one. And then even like Austin Reeves and some of the other guys on the floor. So let me know what you guys think about that. I think that's a very realistic trade. Again, I think you have to overpay for it. I think, LeBron would end up probably having to take a pay cut still, potentially. I don't know if he's going to take a pay cut or not, but LeBron may have to take a pay cut if we wanted to sign a few free agents after that, right? So get some pieces after that to fill some of those roster spots that we would lose, especially if it's a guy like Rui we have to send over there in that trade because Rui was huge for us this year. But um, if we can pull that off, for one, again, I think it's realistic. I told you guys why I think it's realistic. Minnesota's going to have some tough choices to make this summer. Do not forget that Minnesota is going to have a lot of money on the books if they try to sign all these guys back, and they're going to have some tough choices to make. So consider that. I think it's a very real possibility. If that doesn't work, obviously you got some guys on the market who you could look to. But still, right, the price tag is going to be about the same. Miles Turner's going to be 30. I think he either is 30 or going to be 30. He's going to demand probably about 30 million a year. And then you get one of these guys who can be a starting center, and then maybe you can sign somebody like Steven Adams. To be honest with you, I would love to have Steven Adams on the Lakers as a backup big. I don't know how much just from his personalities, I think, for one, I think he's going to get paid because he played really well in the playoffs. So I think he's going to be a guy who makes another like 10 million a year. There might be a team that even pays him 15. Who knows? Just for how meaningful he was in the playoffs and some of the stuff that he does with his size. Size is starting to become a premium again. So maybe we could get a backup big like Steven Adams. I think he may be too expensive for us, but I would love to have him. So I say all this to say, got to start being realistic in the Lakers search. I think if you want a prominent defensive center who can cover up a lot of holes, who can catch lobs, I think those hands struggle a little bit for the most part. He can catch lobs. He can finish at the rim. I think Rudy may be is the best option the right word? The most realistic option that fits the Lakers' needs, that covers up a lot of holes. I think it's something that I would look into. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know if that's a crazy take to have. But honestly, I think for an 82-game season, I would like to have Rudy on the Lakers. I think he would be a good fit. Again, wouldn't be the best fit, but would be a good fit. So again, let me know what you guys think. Appreciate you guys sticking around, listening. I'm excited to continue dropping these episodes while we are still in the playoffs. The playoffs are always so much fun. And then remember, like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend, and we'll be back soon.